Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. I'm your host, Ben.
And I'm your co-host, Carissa.
Perfect. And everyone, hey, welcome into today's show. In just a moment, we will be connecting with the one, the only Mr. Scott Schober on the second to last show of the year. That's right. Tomorrow we will have on, I really can't think of anyone better to end it with than the ever upbeat Nathan Evans. That'll be on Wednesday, and it's going to be a fun show. Definitely join us. And yeah, you can definitely do that. But today is going to be Scott Schober, all things cybersecurity, and it's going to be an amazing time to have him on because if you haven't been noticing, things have really been certain things have been hitting other things, I guess, as the saying would go, and a lot of cybersecurity news, and I've really wanted to get Scott on, first of all, before the end of the year, but also in these trying times, especially with, it seems like every large organization is getting hacked or compromised, and obviously the real threat there is, yes, national security and all that good stuff, but also for the individual. So this is this will be a good show. So I think with that being said, everyone, let's just go ahead and say that computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, all the shows. You can find that there at Computer America. We highly encourage you to do that. And you can find there today's show, past shows, future shows, podcasts, show notes, so any links, including a link to our guest website, which you can also head on over to scottschober.com as well. And as I understand it, we'll also get a little bit of time to talk about his new book. And, let's just face it, that seniors are unfortunately some of the most compromised individuals online, and he has an entire book out on how to protect people, and hey, maybe even protect your parents or your loved ones in in this time. Not a bad stocking stuffer. So hey, Carissa, unless there's anything that you would like to mention, I think we'll go ahead and get started with today's show.
I'm ready.
You're ready? All right, I'm ready too then. Everyone, as I said before, Scott Schober, he is our resident cybersecurity expert, author of Hacked Again, and of course, now the new book. I got this. I just had it up here on the website, and then the Senior Cyber Best Security Practices for Your Golden Years. Scott Schober with, of course, Craig Schober, his brother. Scott, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be back here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. Yeah. And by the way, you sound great. So, and obviously your studio always looks great. So perfect. We can do this perfectly. So, Scott, how you been?
Yeah. How you guys doing there? Great to be here. Hopefully you could see me and hear me okay. We have having a crazy day. At the end of the year is our last day of the year. So we're running. So if I sounded winded, I apologize. Just raced up the studio here, but honored again to be back here. And lots of interesting things happening, I think, in the world of cyber, and it's been a pretty exciting year. And as you kind of introduced, and again, just briefly, I'm Scott Schober, President and CEO of Berkeley Varitronics, and focus a lot in the area of cybersecurity and education and sharing tips and hopefully best practices to keep all of us safer.
Absolutely, way better intro than mine. But I also wanted to draw attention to your new book that you have out now, and keeping everyone safe, but then also seniors. We talked a bit in past shows, kind of why you decided to write this book, and I think it was just about to be published last time you were on the show, but now it is out and kind of ready to go. So talk about kind of what was your inspiration for this book, and kind of who is the target audience? Is it the parents? Is it the kids of parents? Is it anyone? I mean, talk about why did you write this book?
Yeah, so some great questions. Kind of a culmination of a few things, but a lot of it really stemmed through, and I weave the story through about my grandfather. He was 99 years old. He was just 1 month shy of hitting 100. And before he passed away not too long ago. And in the process, his last few years, and he was really a tech pioneer working at Bell Labs in Murray Hills for over 40 years. And he worked on some of the earliest satellites that got launched. So he was really a true techie, and was even part of this company many years back, Berkeley Varitronics. So thinking about all of his struggles the last few years, trying to stay connected in technology, the internet, trading stocks, emails, and all the different scams and problems that he faced and frustrations, I found myself, my brother, co-author Craig, and then also our father, Gary Schober, were very frustrated, constantly trying to help keep our grandfather safe from getting into trouble. And he had a couple doozies where he was swindled out of money and different scams and things like that constantly. So in the process, I started to look for a good resource. Is there a book out there? Is there any blogs? And there wasn't a whole lot of information that I thought was practical that a senior could actually digest and use, because it was always too techy, and
Right.
It got a little frustrating. So I said, you know what? Maybe it's time to write a book. And hence was the genesis of Senior Cyber. And I asked my brother to help me as a co-author, and he does a fabulous job. Great gifted writer. He's actually listening to Computer America live right now, so a shout out to him. He's in our West Coast office in Los Angeles, California. But the book is really designed to hopefully break it down, keep it simple with actionable items. And throughout the book, we've got some illustrations that are tied to senior tips. So there are little takeaway tips that will define words that are unfamiliar, but tips that people can apply, especially if you're seniors, and that could be useful. And you were asking about the audience. It really is targeted mainly towards seniors. However, that being said, many people that have already got a taste of it have said, geez, this is perfect. I'm going to get this gift for my mom. I'm going to get this for my dad because they're struggling with the computer or struggling with the internet. So it kind of serves those two different camps there, and hopefully will empower and educate and help people feel a little bit more comfortable and in dealing with all of these things and staying safe from scammers and cyber criminals.
Exactly. And I got to say that there is hope. Not that my mother is, kind of not as sophisticated as other people out there, but I just recently got her a smartphone, with this last generation of upgrades, and she has taken to it like a duck to water. Like there's a lot of benefit bringing, especially your parents and, kind of people who hadn't embraced technology to the level that I think that a lot of us have. There's a lot of value to be found there. I truly do think, especially with COVID, being able to stay social, there's a lot of benefits to, kind of what you have to show in your book.
Yeah, and you make a great point about just smartphones even. And that's one of the most common things, because I think we're all, at least myself, I mean, I'm glued to my iPhone 24/7. It's always next to me. For seniors, sometimes a smartphone is not the best choice. And I spend a lot of time in one of the chapters just dealing with that, trying to help the senior understand what features they do require, what they don't require, and not feel bad if they don't have to get a smartphone. There's a lot of other options and things you can get out there. And a lot of it saves you money on top of it, so you don't feel overwhelmed. So helping them make good, sound technology choices I think is part of what I'm trying to also help get the point across when they're reading the book there, because everything, you don't have to have the latest and greatest all the time to still be, in the tech crowd and have conversations. You see, sometimes need to use what's going to work for you and your situation.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure that for maybe seniors who really enjoy like reading the newspaper, magazines, maybe something like a tablet would be kind of better for them. Tablet computer,
Even like
but
Kindle or something like that.
or even something as simple as a Kindle would be a nice kind of baby step to technology. So all that I'm sure covered. Yeah, and of course, all that I'm sure covered in Scott's book. We're going to go ahead and transition now, but please, everyone, go check that out. Okay, so Scott, since you last been on, I got to say the world has gone to heck in a handbasket. It's crazy out there. Probably not your fault, so let's just get that out of the way real quick. The biggest story I think of the past week, and looking back, we totally should have had you on as it was happening. Like I think even the first day that we reported on the topic of SolarWinds, even we had just reported this happened, and there wasn't really a lot of information. And it's only in the past couple of days, really, I think we covered it maybe Thursday, a little bit Friday, and since then we're starting to get a bigger picture. And if the first day everyone was like, well, that's not good, the second day was like, that's really not good, and by today we're like, I don't want to scream on the air, but everyone is just running around on fire screaming. I think it exactly at this point. It's certainly gotten to a point. So I wanted you to, kind of to the best of your knowledge, what have you heard about SolarWinds, and kind of how do you see the initial breach and kind of what happened to begin with?
Yeah, I think kind of to your point, the way you saw it kind of unfold is the same way I saw it, and probably many people. We heard about it and we said, oh, it's probably another breach. As we all dug in deeper, and I know I certainly did, trying to understand what the SolarWinds provides, and they've got software and they help a lot of remote clients connect in. And then right
SolarWinds is not.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
The world of COVID and this pandemic, everybody's remote, everybody's connecting in. This is a perfect storm here. The gravity and the size of SolarWinds, I personally was a little bit surprised. They're based out of, I think, Austin, Texas. They've got over 3,200 employees. They've got 320,000 plus customers. Mm-hmm. So they span pretty big. I think one of the articles, I don't know if it was this one here that you have pulled up, but it talked about, of the Fortune 500 companies, 400 of those 500 companies use SolarWinds packages, and hence have personal information closely tied, customer information, proprietary information, lots of things there that perhaps could be hacked. And interestingly enough, the companies, some of them which are named here, the Microsofts and a number of other really large known companies, government agencies, hospitals, universities,
Treasury, Department of Energy,
computer networks, and they saw the malware there, and not sure how much was or wasn't taken or when it was placed. So there's all these unknowns, and that to me is the single most scary thing, is the unknown. What's going to happen and when? We don't know. So this is going to be a story that kind of evolved, and we've talked about Yahoo and Equifax and the targets and many of the other things in the past. And sometimes it's over the course of 6 months, a year, till we start to see a clearer picture. Was it really Russia that hacked it and hacked into this and created the malware? It looks like it is. Do we know 100% for sure? No, it's still under investigation. So those type of things, I'm kind of excited to see how this unfolds and what the bigger picture really holds ahead for us.
And yeah, so of course we have this article here from Bloomberg. I mean, there's another one here from BBC Tech. And to your point, 400. I had heard 425 of 500. That's what they boasted on their own website. That's not what was compromised, but they boasted 425. I think the Treasury Department, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, all these were customers of SolarWinds, and the only, and this was one detail on the first day and kind of what was compromised, to your knowledge, you can kind of speak to what damage can be done here. But if I recall, what was actually compromised was over the course of months, they had access to a server that pushed updates to the entire system that SolarWinds was using, so that they had access to the updates, and they could put in any kind of code. They could put in backdoors, they could put in whatever they could, and they could actually push those updates because obviously they had access to a trusted server, and they could send any kind of update with any kind of vulnerability into everyone's network. And that seemed to be kind of like, to your point, they don't know who was compromised or what was compromised, because they know for sure this one server was, and that one server has, serves, well, pretty much everyone in their database. So,
yeah, I think another standout to me that made me kind of step back and think about it a little bit, they exploited kind of a backdoor, but the way they got in was really working around MFA, multi-factor authentication. You and I and many other cyber experts often preach, hey, security is achieved in layers. You can't just use your normal login credentials with a password. You need to use multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication as that added security level. Well, they really kind of worked around that system, which kind of scared me because you don't hear about that often. And that tells us where we're going into 2021. That is a concern, because we all count on, well, I'm taking this extra security step. I got a long, strong password and I'm using multi-factor authentication. I'm safe and I'm secure. Guess what? Not necessarily the case anymore, because this breach kind of exposed some of the vulnerabilities that we all thought were so secure. Is it more secure than traditional login with a password and your username? Absolutely. However, good cyber criminals know how to work their way around that. And that's exactly what they did in here to gain access, again, through a third party, and they start working their way in and doing all kinds of damage, and we're going to see a lot more of it unfold.
Carissa, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe this person was on the inside, is multi-factor authentication still, the most effective even from, the inside of the system?
And I gotta say,
somebody on the outside myself that just found a workaround to beat the multi-factor authentication, to almost intercept it in a sense and fool it. And there's a lot of vulnerabilities and backdoors in these type of systems. And again, once they're identified, they can patch them quickly. And they did do that. Microsoft jumped on it, and a couple other companies. Oh, here's a vulnerability. Here's the backdoor. They're coming in. Let's patch it. Let's stop it so it doesn't keep happening. But sometimes once they're in, and this unknown period of time they've been in there, the damage is done. They could have scarfed information. They could have copied it. They could have put it out on the dark web. We don't know. And those are the things that I think are going to be clarified in the weeks to come with this story. So it's certainly going to be in the headlines for a bit as we learn more about what's going on here.
Right. And I actually went out and found the article that I was just looking at. This article from Bloomberg was actually exactly what I was thinking about, where, kind of to your point, Scott, when we talk about things like the National Health Services or, kind of schools and local governments and places like that get hacked, a lot of times it's not because, there's a massive, impressive movement against these organizations. It's because, no, they're vulnerable and the vulnerabilities are known. And they just, through either negligence, lack of funds, or, many other causes that, just things don't get implemented, they get hacked. And a gentleman who claims to have worked with the company back in 2017, 2018, who had since left the company, had mentioned in a 23-page PowerPoint that Bloomberg had acquired, mentioned back in 2017 that the survival of the company depends on an internal commitment to security. And they mentioned that, it was his belief that from a security perspective, incredibly easy to attack. Essentially, they mentioned that they discovered that they were glaring security lapses at the company, and of course software was used in a suspected Russian hacking campaign. So that's also the reason why they're thinking it's Russian, is that Russian hackers have used their software to penetrate networks in the past. Scott, this seemed we're, like you said, we're going to have to wait a couple months to figure out what really happened. But so far, things are starting to look like it's another case of we won't get hacked. It's okay. No need for two-factor authentication. Like, I get this feeling, Scott, that the bare minimums were not met for what we kind of expect consumers to have, and it's going to be something as simple as like a weak password on the server.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is going to unfold, and we're going to probably look back and laugh a little bit and say, here was the weak point identified, and do we learn things from it? Sure, we always do. Unfortunately, there's always a disconnect between when hackers actually penetrate and get into a network versus when it's discovered sometime later, sometime, in this case, is months later that we know so far, we believe, to what really happened maybe down the road until the full investigation takes place. And the part that I guess concerns me is how widespread it is, though. That makes you say, what happens next as they get into these different situations? Are they targeted attacks now? They're going to be going after hospitals via this COVID pandemic and ransomware attacks. The government, obviously, they could do a lot of damage there if they get in and compromise certain information for extortion or for ransom. So it's all the what ifs that go through my mind and make people wonder, how bad could this possibly get? It can get a lot worse once we start seeing some things happening, but not much has actually happened yet where it's been reported as a result of the compromise.
Right. No. The actual fallout is going to be much larger. I think to kind of like the Equifax thing where it said, well, we had a security breach. We don't know how many. Freeze your credit and move on with your life. And then we found out, it was pretty much every tax-paying American in the country. And back to my point about a weak password, this was a different situation back in 2019 that didn't make a lot of news because they claimed no one got access to it and they fixed it. They said there was a misconfiguration where they were displaying the password in plain text, to people on the outside, and essentially the server password was SolarWinds 123. Super simple if you're trying to hand off the password to, all your coworkers. Very bad from a security standpoint.
But more secure than password 123 at least, but not much. barely. So
that's almost as bad as that MRI machine in the hospital that they didn't change the password for.
Yeah, and that's the whole issue of kind of default equipment coming out with admin password username and not changing that kind of thing. Happens all the time, and to your point, Carissa, across a lot of sectors. And you would hope that the people who are in charge of network integrity would be a little bit more sophisticated than this. But Scott, everyone's human, I guess.
Everyone's human, and I think that was again one of the reasons when I wrote Senior Cyber, learning how people have patterns. And I even looked at my father. I was recently sitting with him, helping him with some password management and things like that. And to my surprise, he was showing me his login credentials. His username was the same as his password, and neither were secure. And I said, wait a minute, there's no way you can even use the same thing for both. Don't they even have a check in the system to make sure you're not using the same thing or accidentally typing it? And they didn't. And it did work, and it wasn't secure, and it scared me to death. So we had to redo all his passwords and his usernames and his logins. So, and this is somebody that is expert in the tech field and understands computers and was building the early Apple computers back in 1976, 1977. So people understand technology, but this passwords, I think, is a brick wall for a lot of us. We're all frustrated with it, and we need to get away from passwords to something more of a true authentication that's more secure. As we get into some of the biometrics and facial recognition and fingerprints and other authentication measures, hopefully the day of the password will go away, because otherwise we're going to be plagued with breach after breach after breach, as we could see, and people using simple, stupid passwords because they just can't remember them and can't remember, don't know how to use a password manager and lost their sticky notes or whatever the case may be.
And there was a topic and there was a story about actually about 4 or 5 days ago that it was first reported. I didn't really cover it, although it's very applicable now. This article, this one from TechRadar.pro, but obviously this was picked up by a lot of different publications. Microsoft, and this was, I think, in a blog post that they, hey, check that out. Nice little, redirect link. Anyways, Microsoft is pledging December 17th that 2021 will be the end of passwords. So they're hoping that that they have some kind of passwordless, I guess, kind of registration portal, and they're going to have some kind of metric. I didn't look through the blog post, and again, we didn't get a chance to, to really cover it. But Scott, it looks like Microsoft and actually a lot of organizations seem to be heading the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think they have to, because they see how vulnerable all companies are. If you take a small company like ours, where we're 30-some engineers, but now contrast that to Microsoft, who's got, 100,000 plus employees. And all it takes is one employee that's using poor password management, and they're on the network, and that's your portal to get in for hackers to start causing problems. So large tech companies need to focus in on a solution to this problem. And you need a leader like Microsoft. Typically, they're very good with security policies, implementation. It just takes a while to get there, because many of the users, they're stuck on an old version of OS or something else, and they just don't get away from it, which is part of their problem. They have too much market share. That's what I think fundamentally is a problem. So I think it is coming. I think it's pretty aggressive to say the year 2021 is the year where there'll be no passwords. I think it's a starting migration where we get away from passwords, in my opinion. And I applaud them for that, and other companies that are willing to try to go that route, because we need to do something, and we need to do it soon. Because I don't feel, unfortunately, that we're that much more secure than we were 5 years ago, than we were 10 years ago. Yet look at how much spend has been put forth in the world of cybersecurity, how much education is out there. And yet I still feel we always go back to that same subject, and we joke about it all the time. Password, stupid, right? It's that simple, but a lot of times that's a fundamental problem. People still can't get over that hurdle to use a good password manager and make the difference.
Unfortunately, we're asked to make so many passwords a day that somewhere someone is going to not take it seriously, which I personally can't blame them. My life has changed since taking your advice. I've started using a password manager. To Microsoft's credit, they mentioned that the year of the passwordless 2021, it's more for the Azure Cloud user logins. And it looks like they're using a third-party app on your phone that will essentially sign in for you. And it's that third-party handshake that makes the no password kind of possible and more secure. So using a third-party, first-party app, but using another app to confirm your login on your main account seems to be the way that Microsoft is trending. So
that seems a little sketchy, though. Like, what if somebody gets into that app and then gets into your stuff subsequently from getting into that app?
I mean, there's a lot of things they could do between, Ben was in North Carolina 1 minute and the next minute, Kuala Lumpur. That's a little fuzzy. That's a little fishy. We're going to lock that account. Like there's kind of habits, Ben input his information in literally 0.0002 seconds, which is a little bit faster than Ben normally puts his information in. Scott, I'm talking things like behavioral and location-based stuff that they can, really that they can check to make sure it's not compromised. Like, am I on the right track? Like, that's how they do that?
You're 100% right. In fact, a lot of the systems that I do use now, be it for accessing 401k, for banking, for stocking information, what they're typically doing is they're looking at my IP address. So they could see what my computer, the network, through the wireless router, they could see where I am based. And it may be the local town where your broadband service is from, but it can isolate it from there. So to your point, suddenly if it looks like someone's logging in or hacking in from India, red flag goes up and they could stop the connection, ask you for an additional level of security, authentication, security challenge, question, whatever the case may be. And I think that's kind of applying some of the artificial intelligence to the world of cybersecurity. And it's starting to happen, and it's good to see, but it does slow the process down a little bit. When
Right.
you're so used to getting on
Yeah.
your computer and you boom, 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 and you log on, you jump in, do whatever you got to do. Now you're at a different spot on your mobile device. It's not always that seamless. And that's what I think Microsoft is trying to do. And a lot of, obviously, as you said there, it's being pushed to the cloud. Cloud has gotten so much more secure. It was kind of, in the beginning stages, it was very insecure. Now it's becoming more secure than a lot of other methods. So people are trusting the cloud. There's more security there. There's better encryption. There's better authentication. So I think that is the future. And it's a fancy buzzword, but really it's a secure server somewhere else that's holding and housing your data, but getting it to you easily and efficiently and securely. And that's what we're looking forward to as things progress to the next generation of security.
Right. It's it really needs to get there, because I'm a little sick of these SolarWinds 123, password 123, football 123. Those are going to keep happening. Humans need to be protected from themselves, and there you go. So there's that. And by the way, one other kind of aspect of the whole SolarWinds that we didn't really talk about, there was a tweet out from Marco Rubio, and I believe the head of the FBI, I want to say, or the State Department. I know that the State Department did. Where they said that it was definitely the Russians who hacked. Marco Rubio, who I think is in charge of like the cybersecurity, kind of security team there in Washington, said that this was definitely the Russians as well. So, we're gonna have to wait and see what happened to who did it and what they got and all that good stuff. And we may truly never know. But as of right now, a lot of large organizations, and it looks to be state driven, Scott, like that. And there's another article here that we're probably not going to cover in its entirety, but it's this one from Ars Technica. Russia's been really prolific in these past couple of months, like between the election and kind of what's going on now. It seems like Russia is really diving headfirst into seeing how much chaos and stuff that they can compromise online. Yeah.
And I think to your point, when this code is analyzed, and I'm sure they've done some initial analysis of the malware that's being found on multiple computer networks here, it was placed. When you do close analysis of it, what you quickly start to find is in the code, you can see the origin of it, basically that being Russia. And that's what's really the clear tell. When they see that again and again, they see that pattern, they almost like a fingerprint. And usually that's not done by just a group of kids in their basement that are hacking. It's usually state-sponsored, where it's very carefully covered, and it's orchestrated over a long period of time, and not just months, usually a year or more, to get into these targeted systems, exploit the vulnerability, and then really slowly extract all the information. And then they try their best to cover their tracks or send, distractions and confusion. And that's the scary part. Sponsored hacks.
Another thing that Russia was doing that I don't think a lot of people had heard about was that they were trying to cause as much chaos in the supply chain of refrigerated trucks for the vaccines for COVID-19 to be sent out. And this article here mentions that was a months-long campaign to make sure that the logistics of that were start to unravel. But luckily it didn't. Wow. But they definitely the U.S. government definitely took note of that.
Yeah, and I think the one of the stories I was listening on one of the radio programs when I was commuting into work today started talking about, is this the official start of World War III, a cyber war, where Russia is now retaliating to things that they claim that the United States have done? Some people say no way, other people say, hey, something's brewing and it's starting. It is very fuzzy and hard to say because there's no clear line in the sand. When you see something fly overhead and drop a missile, they see the plane, they see the missile. They could really calculate quickly, hey, this came from this country for a retaliatory
we're under
reason.
attack, yeah.
Ones and zeros, they really are very difficult. And I know, as we talked about in the past, when you're using VPNs and we're using the Tor network and the dark web, you're disguising the code, you're making things route differently. You can really conceal your identity. There's true anonymity there. There's a lot of cover up there. You could make it look like it was actually the Chinese that did it and not the Russians. So those type of things are often in play here. So I think it's very important before people get, jump to conclusions, a proper investigation has to go forth. The fact that it hits so many government agencies and access to such critical information, there's going to be a deeper dive investigation, and perhaps some retaliatory things may result in this particular case, which is concerning for everyone out there.
It's and I'm also hesitant to call it kind of World War III because, much to your point, there's not actual physical, there's no battlefields, there's no battle lines, that kind of thing. But a Cold War or a proxy war, or, this is a different kind of confrontation. And there have been lots of books written about how the next war front is cyberspace, is the internet and supply chain. So let's hope Russia doesn't get too far ahead in this. And I know that there's a lot of great people in the U.S. government that are working to kind of prevent this kind of thing, and let's face it, hone their own skills in cyber warfare, because obviously the U.S. doesn't want to be caught behind in this all important theater. But Scott, I think a good way to transition this from SolarWinds and that whole thing. Now, Russia may be, adversary number one. Let's go ahead and say that, Scott. According to this next post, can you guess which is number 2 on our adversarial list?
If it was up to me, from all the research and things I've read, I'd always say China's number 2.
Wrong. It's the Dutch. Okay, no, I'm actually joking. This Dutch gentleman who is an ethical hacker, and what an ethical hacker means is that they tell everyone what they're doing, how they did it, so that they can improve their security. You may have heard this story, Scott, but this one was published like 6 days ago. About he had. And, Twitter says Trump was not hacked. Trump said, and the White House said, that he was not hacked. I don't think anyone was hacked, because I don't count guessing someone's password hacking. But he definitely did prove to the Dutch government that he guessed President Donald Trump's password, which, by the way, was MAGA 2020 ! And he was able to get into the official Trump verified and approved Twitter account. And of course, he shared his findings, and they warned everyone, and they have since changed it. If anyone out there was hoping to take his Twitter account for a joyride. But again, just to kind of hammer home the point that no one, even people who have the entire might of the U.S. government behind them to make sure that they stay secure, no two-factor authentication, simple password, this can happen to anyone in any position.
Yeah, and I think Twitter or really any company is truly hackable. And I could tell you there are not just 1 or 2 people trying to hack into a celebrity's account or Donald Trump's account. It's probably hundreds of people on a daily basis that are trying automated tools, that are guessing passwords and everything under the sun. So am I surprised? Absolutely not. There's many well-known business industry leaders over the past year that their Twitter account has been hacked and compromised, and people put up stupid pictures and that. My one question is, why would somebody want to hack Donald Trump's Twitter account and actually take credit for it or claim it? That in itself would make them look a little foolish, because some of his tweets are just crazy.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to have any association to that myself personally, but yeah, I'm sure it's a target for disinformation or further disinformation perhaps, and it could lead to a whole mess, that's for sure. And they'll never admit whether it was or wasn't compromised or hacked, but and not surprised about the password either.
At this point, I think it's kind of a point of pride for him as an ethical hacker, because he also compromised Donald Trump's Twitter account in 2016. He was the one who found out that the password for Twitter was "you're fired." Back in 2016, which obviously is his slogan. It seems to be just more of a because I can kind of thing, and because I know Donald Trump as a kind of on a personal level. Like, I know what kind of passwords he would create. So, okay, there's that story. Let's go ahead and transition once more, because Scott, this show is flying by. Carissa, we did a story, I believe it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, about a Zoom employee being charged by the U.S. government.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Scott, did you hear anything about the DOJ bringing charges against a gentleman from, well, I believe he lived in China. No, he lived in the United States. The DOJ
Helping
claimed,
Chinese or something?
Yes, he was helping the Chinese. Yes, he was helping the Chinese government gain IP addresses, email addresses, usernames, and passwords of people hosting different kinds of events as well as protests against the Chinese government.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about it. I don't know a whole lot about it, but again, not surprising. I think the president of Zoom, I think it's Eric Chan, if I'm right. But he is an American, but he is of Chinese descent, a brilliant guy. Nobody could say Zoom is a terrible company, because look how good they've done. They stepped in it at the right time during this pandemic, and I think they've got what I call one of the best video chatting platforms, the most reliable. I used Skype in the past. We right now are on Zoom. It works well.
Yeah.
You can't complain for what you get for the price. I think it's a really good deal. I'm so glad they've added the security to the Zoom platform that was missing in the beginning, and that was really probably its biggest downfall. They rushed to market and didn't have it that secure. Some of the information was directed through Chinese servers and such. That's all been resolved, we believe, and encryption's properly being used. So they've made dramatic leaps from where they were to where they are now. Where they're going in the future, now they've got more competition because Skype is kind of being unwoven, I guess, in the world of Microsoft and relaunched, and a lot of other challengers are out there, and Google especially. So we'll see who wins the dominant race for the video chat platform. But I think they have months, if not years, of lucrative business with this ongoing pandemic. So it's not going away tomorrow, that's for sure.
That is definitely for sure. I don't see this as a way of, kind of Zoom kind of losing any clout here. Zoom has already kind of come under fire or scrutiny, I should say, for enabling or working closely with the Chinese government to shut down these kinds of protests. And as a result of those allegations, to your point, Scott, they hid IP addresses. They, made things more anonymous. They made, changes to passwords. They actually implemented end-to-end encryption instead of just saying that they had end-to-end encryption. Like essentially what this gentleman was enabling for the government has since been patched and updated. But yeah, the DOJ, they don't forget easy, and they're bringing charges against one individual. So just thought
I think it's important to realize too, and sometimes Americans don't fully get the sense of this, but when data does route through a server and that server resides in China, that data may be encrypted, it should be encrypted. However, if the Chinese authorities, the Chinese government comes in and says, we demand those decryption keys by law in China, you're required to hand over those decryption keys, and they're lawfully allowed to take that data and use it and analyze it. From a perspective sitting in the United States, one would say, wait a minute, that's my data, that's encrypted, I have rights, I have privacy. Well, I mean, legally in China, they're doing what their law says is okay. It doesn't agree necessarily with what laws we believe to be fair and reasonable here. So it's that kind of fine line. So the fact that if you go into your Zoom account and look at your settings and see what servers your data goes through, and you can actually go in there and select them. And by default, if you're in the United States with a US Zoom account, it does not get routed through China, and hence you do have more privacy, you are more protected, and your data stays encrypted, and you hope that nobody's playing games and lying where the data is really going through, and that things are secure and safe. But understanding some of these different rules from country to country is kind of important, I think, when you talk about the bigger privacy, big data issues that are really happening out there in the tech community. And it doesn't stop at Zoom. We need to kind of look at the bigger picture and ask about, well, what about Google? What about Facebook? And what about
TikTok?
Apple? So, so on and so forth. Because we buy into big data, into these big tech companies, it to some degree opens up the door to privacy issues. So we have to be very careful what we choose and what we say yes to and opt into in this society today.
It's super important, and of course, it's not just what China does, but hey, America had a huge fight for the exact same thing, which is why things like TikTok, kind of are the way they are. And that whole fight was that, hey, they didn't want the data to route through China, but also they wanted to make sure that I guess the data coming out of TikTok was accessible by the U.S. government as well. So, but hey, we have better things to worry about than, kind of these higher nation states, kind of seeing what you do with your dog. Instead, though, we have some other stories here. So that was the whole DOJ Zoom thing. Looking at these other stories, Scott, there's also... Okay, so there's a couple different stories that we could tackle here, and one of them is with I don't know, Scott. It's not exactly security, exactly, but there's a new bill that was wrapped up in the COVID-19 relief bill that just passed yesterday, I believe. That will send something to so many desperate Americans out there. But something that was rolled in there was in this omnibus was something called the CARE Act, I believe. And I'm not sure, Scott, how much you cares Act, how much you care about streaming and pirating and that whole thing. But it has stiffer penalties for people who pirates, as in, I guess, kind of, obviously with COVID-19, more people have been getting, let's say, first run releases of films in their home. This seems to be kind of a reaction to that, where if you film a movie that you paid for in your own home and you then redistribute that as a copy, they are, it's no longer just like a misdemeanor, fines, whatever, a cease and desist. No, they are now trying to say that if you distribute copyrighted material, it's a felony and you are subject to fines or imprisonment up to 10 years. And Carissa,
That's
obviously,
ridiculous.
Carissa scoffed. Carissa, why do you scoff?
Guilty.
I used to sail the high seas myself. I can't really deny that, but I don't know. I feel like maybe if you're redistributing it, but like, what does that count as? Redistributing to your 3 friends that maybe want to watch the movie, or are they talking about making money? Because how do you even do that without getting caught? We
here at Computer America do not advocate any kind of pirating or anything whatsoever like that. But I got to say that that is one of the issues that a lot of people are having a tough time with. This is that it's left openly vague, and something as simple as sharing memes of copyrighted material may be, and of course by memes I mean people taking maybe video clips, like a 15-second clip out of context, putting new words over it. You're technically redistributing, let's say, a 15-second clip of The Avengers by Disney. Does that come with a fine? Memes are memes, and what is fair use and that kind of thing. It's a very tricky situation, and Congress has kind of amped it up to 11 by now, saying, "Hey, prison is now on the table." So, Carissa had her piece. I also wanted to see if Scott had any interest in this as well.
Well, I could speak to this a little bit. From many years ago, I did used to pirate software, mostly games, and would hold the record for copying more games, I think, than any other individual on the globe, my brother and I. So we've got a bad reputation years back. But honestly, that was the days before the internet, when we were very young. We
like
pirated a lot of games, bulletin board systems, and we would try to hack into them and obtain passwords, and mostly for trade. We did none of it for monetary gain, only for ego boost and bragging rights. So it was a lot of fun back then. Now, ironically, I did speak, it was, I think, a little less than 2 years ago out in California, a company that actually provides software monitoring platform for games, but more for programs like AutoCAD and advanced programs that are expensive to companies. And the company is called Silent. and Cylynt. Great company, and they focus on software piracy and laws and regulations, and actually have things that can monitor it. It's a really cool, cutting edge company. I had the privilege of interviewing the CEO twice on my episode of What Keeps You Up at Night, where he shared his cyber fear. His name's Ted, great guy, really smart, but they're a brilliant bunch of engineers that are really got their hands wrapped around this problem of software piracy. So if you get a chance, I encourage any of the viewers, check it out, learn about them, but they've got some great cutting edge things, and it's really some advanced algorithms that can actually monitor the different seats and licenses to make sure that people aren't ripping things off. I don't think they really focus in the area of movies and things like that. And I was just thinking how different it's gone from the days when I was younger for, Betamax and VHS, where you could actually record things on your own, to when it went over to Laserdisc and eventually DVDs and Blu-ray and so on and so forth. Now we're going full force over to what? It's really streaming. High res, streaming video, and then with the wireless technology of 5G and Wi-Fi 6, you're going to be picking up your cell phone and you're going to hit a button. I want to watch the latest and greatest Mission Impossible. And guess what's going to happen? Instantly, you could watch it, of course, for a cost. There, they embed a lot of things in the movies into the actual code into the movies, so you can't copy it, or makes it very difficult to copy it at that high resolution and the same audio. So there's a lot of tricks and things in the industry. But then again, there's a lot of tricks and a lot of hackers that have found their way around it. If you simply visit the dark web, and I did this just for research purposes recently, you can get movies before they're even released.
Yeah.
Copy is not as good. The quality and the sound is not as good, but I tell you what, you could actually beat Netflix to the market if you're really a pirate out there these days.
Most of those that we've kind of covered on the show and talked about, most of those are like advanced copies, because places like Disney and many well, really everyone, they send and Sony is very well known for this. They send copies to kind of digital effects and remasters, and kind of when they do the after or the post production side of things, they send it to studios over in other parts of the world, and those are the ones that unfortunately get compromised and leaked. They don't have all the post production, the audio hasn't been tinkered with, but hey, it's the full-fledged video, kind of good enough, I guess, to some people. And to your point, Scott, yeah, that's before they even hit theaters. We don't recommend that you do any of this, folks. It does happen, and I got to say that, it's crazy to now think about, what you were just talking about, Scott and Carissa, as well, that, kind of what used to be, and I grew up with this too, everyone did it, is now suddenly very illegal and soon to be, punishable by, kind of by jail time. I'm very curious as to, first of all, how they're even going to enforce this. I know that they can kind of track things and, embed things like you were saying, Scott. This seems that, Scott, this reminds me of all of the penalties and fines. Like, you can say that anyone who runs a robocalling farm is to be sentenced to death by shooting them into space. Like that is, and like you could say like that is the punishment for robo farming. But Scott, even with like $1 million for every robocall out there, the United States government has only collected, was it like $1,500 in fines?
Nothing. Yeah,
you can put crazy fines and penalties on this kind of thing, but enforcing it is nigh impossible.
Well, there was the one instance, I think we were living in Greenville, South Carolina, and the internet provider would spy on you and check your download and upload rates and all that stuff. And then occasionally you'd get like a message in, the snail mail, and it'd be like, oh, you're doing this thing. We're suspecting it's illegal. If you keep doing it, we're going to look into it further and, charge you penalties and stuff like that. So maybe it's the ISPs
but even that
you're acquiring this from.
Even that has come under some scrutiny, because now, these companies, these ISPs, be they AT&T, Comcast, Charter, whatever, they are being tasked with essentially being law enforcement. They have to investigate, they have to monitor, they have to do things that, to private citizens that are paying them money. They're being asked to essentially play the role of law enforcement. And even they're pushing back, saying that, we don't want this responsibility. This is a dispute between, kind of the person stealing things and the content providers, the musicians, the movie makers, whatever. They don't even want to do that, but they're being forced to by these, the people that own the content. Scott, again, it just seems almost impossible to enforce and very, very tricky.
Yeah, it's extremely expensive to enforce. And I always ask people this. I look at the other side I contrast when I used to pirate games to when I create content. Like, for example, the book. Mm-hmm. You put hundreds of hours, your sweat, your blood, you sacrifice things to write a book. So you hope you make a difference.
We need to baby-proof your house, Scott. Good Lord, you're putting blood into your book? That's awful.
Pretty much, yeah. So when you look at how many sales you get, and then you realize the day you launch a book, somebody from China, Russia, what other country, they steal it immediately, they scan it, and they put it up on the web as a PDF. The amount of money it would take to hire someone to go actually chase it, prosecute it, and get them to pull that down, that illegal copy down. And the funny part is, it's not funny, but they're making money on it. They'll charge $1 or $2 for a book that you're charging whatever, $14, $15, $20. So in a sense, you start to feel, wow, they're stealing from me. Why do things cost so much? It's because there's so much pirated software, books, movies, content. That's a big problem. So it's not a United States problem. It's really a global problem. And I think a respect for IP, respect for anything that people actually author. And it could be, again, somebody that's writing a song or whatever. So I think once you ask yourself from the position where you create content and you make some money on that, you value that much more than when somebody just copies a movie or a game or something else. So it does change your perspective and I think appreciation for it. So I always ask people, think about it from that perspective and then understand why you pay so much. A number of years back, you'd buy a DVD and it'd be $20. And I'd ask myself, geez, this thing costs, 10 cents to burn a DVD in these type of quantities. And okay, Tom Cruise has got to make his cut and the producer and this one and that one, but why $20? It's a lot of money. Well, it's because the movie's ripped off and they don't make as much as they used to in the box offices. So that formula applies across the board with everything these days. So we just got to respect it, I think, more and try to be honest and not copy the world, but pay for what we rightly want to consume and enjoy.
I also do want to say that I remember reading studies about this, that people were looking at the trends in pirating, and actually piracy went down when things like Netflix and streaming were available, and like the content that was on Netflix, it's not that people won't pay for things, it's that they will only buy things that they see are of good value. And a bigger part, which I know there's this whole international, kind of rights and, what's available in Canada is not available in the US, not available in the UK, not available in the EU. If you make it accessible, like easily accessible and affordable, people will pay for it. But as soon as you break one of those two tenets, if you make it overpriced and if you make it not accessible, hey, piracy is your next best option when it comes to that. Obviously there's a lot of argument about what is affordable, what is it worth, that kind of thing. But, make it affordable, make it accessible, and hey, you should be okay with what you got there. To their point, they were talking about this was during Game of Thrones, when Game of Thrones was the biggest show in the world, and before season 8, and Game of Thrones was only available on HBO in the United States, and everyone in like Europe had to wait like a month for it. Turns out no, they didn't wait a month. They just yo-ho. So there you go. there's that story, Scott. We have like 2 minutes left, and were there any topics that we didn't touch that you were hoping to come on the show and talk about? Because I'm sorry, I kind of dominated with my topics.
No worries. The one thing I wanted to, I think one of the bottom links that I sent you there, I did have a chance to put together I try to do a yearly article, and this year I did it, my top 30 cyber influencers that I follow, and I encourage people to take a look at that. So if you could share that in your show notes there.
Sure. Real quick, where did you share that? I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's last link in the email I sent you there.
You sent me an email. That's very important because I don't think I actually received that email. I got one from Domino's, but I don't think that's you.
No, I'm not Domino's.
You will have to resend that because I will most certainly do that. Is it available on your site by any chance? A link to it on your site?
You know what? Bad me. I don't think it's on my site, but I'm going to email you right now. I don't know if you have access to email.
I certainly do, and as soon as you do, we'll be sure to put that up there. If just in music right there, Scott. Real quick, Scott, in like these last 30 seconds, what were you looking for about people who what was a good influencer in cybersecurity? What do they do well?
Well, I think somebody that will educate. The focus is somebody that goes out there and shares what they've learned, so you could pull it in and actually start to make applications. So those influencers are educating across all different means, via media, via researchers, academia. So take a look at that list and try to follow them, and certainly you'll learn a lot more, and you'll become the next expert, hopefully.
There we go. Yep. Cybercrime Magazine. Everyone will have a link in the show notes. Scott, I want to thank you so much. Carissa, I want to thank you as well. Everyone. And Scott, one last thing I'll ask you to say. This will be the last time you're on the show until next year. I would like you to wish everyone a happy holiday, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I hope everybody has a good one out there and a nice winter break. This is my last day of the year here working officially. So everybody, I encourage you to stay safe out there and check out the latest copy of Senior Cyber for pre-order on Amazon. Greatly appreciate your feedback.
Perfect. And thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here on Computer America. Until next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.